Why is Christianity failing in the UK? I feel that God has sent my family and myself to the UK to discover this thing. That's the main reason why He sent us from South Africa here to the UK. If you are not aware, South Africa is one of the countries where Christianity isn't failing. A majority of 80% call themselves Christians, but in my opinion, only about 65% are truly Christians in South Africa. So I came here to the UK knowing that through the word of other Christians that had warned us that Christianity was in trouble in Europe and in the UK. But I don't think anything could have prepared me for how empty the churches are, what goes on inside the churches, and the extreme lack of respect for God in the entire UK among the general population. So my question for the last 4 years was, what causes this? What is the reason? And I believe the reason God sent me here is to observe and to tell. So I observed for 4 years, kept very quiet. I went to multiple churches, probably more than 10, maybe even 20 churches. Observed them for some time, moved on to the next church, observed them for a time, and I saw, and at the same time, of course, because I am an immigrant into this country, I observed the people of the UK in general. So I saw something that I believe is the common denominator. First of all, let me say that definitely there is a cancer inside the church. The cancer is in the form of 4 main things. The first thing is Christians here gossip as if it is a sport. Second thing is they reject the baptism in the Holy Spirit. The other thing is they reject children in the church and make them feel unwelcome. And the children are not brought up by God in a godly way, even by godly people. And the fourth thing is there's a very unwelcoming spirit inside of the church. So those are some of the cancers that I saw inside of the church, but that is not what this video is about. This video is about why is the church in trouble? And it's because of the culture in the UK. And I can lay it all down at one thing: individualism. Individualism in the culture of the UK is what is causing, and for many generations, maybe even hundreds of years, have been causing the death of Christianity in this country. Honestly, it's already dead. I can't even say that the church is failing. It has already failed. For those that do not live in the UK, let me tell you, the average size church here is 30 people that come regularly. And even the big churches are maybe 100, 200 people. For those in the UK, that is not normal. if you thought that was normal, it isn't. A healthy church in South Africa, an average church in South Africa would have 500 people, and that's in a small town. I grew up in a small town. The town only had 3,000 inhabitants, people living there, and my church had 500 people in it, but it was actually the smallest church in town, or one of the smallest. And the bigger churches had 2,000 plus people in them. So you can imagine now that seeing churches like this, where there are 30 people, that's how many people we had in our weekly social groups that got together and drank coffee together, not in an entire church. But in any case, so yeah, you don't even realize the pandemic you're in. You don't even realize you are dead. I've spoken to many Christians and tell them, look at your churches, it's empty. And they tell me, no, it's not empty. We have this person, that person, that person in bed, and very ill, but they are very passionate Christians. But your churches are empty. You can't even fill one room. And if you ask those Christians a few questions, you would very quickly find out how immature they are and how little they know about the Word of God. So let's talk about individuality, individualism, and how it affects the church. Individualism versus collectivism was created by a man called Hofstede. Go look it up. Hofstede, individualism versus collectivism. So it has been measured for many years in all countries over the globe. So I'm going to give you some statistics to tell you how severely you are individualistic or collectivist. So I'm not going to do all the countries in the world, it's just too much, but I'll do some countries. So the UK's individualism score is 89. So the most is 100. Okay. The only country that is higher than the UK is Australia. Australia's individualism score is 90. So UK's individualism score is 89. Australia's individualism score is 90. In the US, the average score is in the 60s. But Hawaii, which I think everyone that has visited there knows how unfriendly the people of Hawaii can be, that individualism score is 91, which is also higher than the UK. Okay, so those are the highest scores in the world. Canada's at 88. South Africa, where I come from, is 65. Argentina is 46. Let's do Europe. So Spain is 51. France is 71. Germany is 76. Italy is 76. Norway is 79. Ukraine is 25. Russia is 39. Okay, so let's pause there. All the countries that are very collectivist, I'm going to call them now. That means they are below 40 for me. If they are below 40, they are extremely collectivist. Okay, so that's China is at 20. Russia is at 39. North Africa is 35, 37. Nigeria is 30. Very collectivist. Then Brazil is 38. The northern states in the US, that's Montana, Washington State, not Washington DC, Washington State, is in the 30s. If you go lower in America, you will find what we call the Bible Belt, and they are 60, 64, 70, around there. So, okay, so what does this mean? Individualism in a culture and in a person means the following. It means You are very self-centered. Everything revolves around you. You are the most important person in your life. You only really care about yourself. It usually means the only real relationships you have are with close family, and even those aren't very loyal. Children, for instance, are emotionally pushed away from a very early age so that they can become individualists, so that they can take care of themselves. Where in a collective based house, a child would be nurtured and protected his entire life, even into adulthood. In an individualistic house, a child will be rejected and pushed away very early so that they are not a burden to the parents and so that they will learn to be individualistic. In the beginning, this causes, of course, a feeling of emotional abandonment in the children, but they get used to it and they actually harden themselves and become individualists about at the time of teenage years. So sometimes early adulthood. So that is the family dynamic of an individualist. The other things of an individualist is money and power is extremely important. What your status in the world is extremely important, and that key point, what your status is in the world, that is what drives people's perception of religion in an individualistic country. So if your surrounding culture feels that church life is very important and you absolutely have to have a church life, a religious life, then because your status is important to you and the way people view you is important to you, you will go to church regularly, loyally. You might not actually know what you're doing, but you'll go to church. But in a country like the UK, where religion is called stupid, where people that follow religion are considered not intelligent, in a country like the UK, because your status is so important to you and how people look at you, you will not go to church. You will, in fact, kicked so severely against the idea of church and religion that you will start to become aggressive when anyone speaks about religion, because your status in the world is now in jeopardy. Your status in your culture is now in jeopardy, because what if they convince me and then I look stupid in front of everyone? So let me explain why this is very, very dangerous. No one should ever control your choice to serve God or reject God, especially not your culture. This is life and death. Your eternal salvation cannot be influenced by the people around you. You have to think about this without worrying that people are going to accept you or reject you. Because if you are in a culture where you will immediately be rejected if you decide to follow Christ, then that was not your choice. You were forced into rejecting Christ. So, but let's look at the opposite, collectivism. I call it the hive mind. That is when any culture is below 40 on the Hofstede. And the hive mind works in exactly the same way as individualism does, in that because the collective culture believes in a certain religion, everyone has to believe in this religion. It's like whatever the queen says is right, type of mentality in the hive mind. So those are countries like Russia, China, certain countries in Africa, especially the Muslim countries. They have an extreme whatever the community says, I do that type of mindset, and that makes them easy to control. What I prefer is a country that is in the middle. So anything below 70 and above 40, that country those people would be able to think about religion and think about what Jesus did. Did he exist? Was he crucified? Is any of the things written in the Bible true? And especially the prophetic words in the Old Testament. That's a way, by the way, how you can test the word. You should take the prophetic words of the Old Testament and test them and see if they came true. Okay, because that's how God proves his God is through prophetic knowledge. So, like I said, I prefer communities that are between 70 and 40 on the Hofstede scale. Those communities can think for themselves. Anything above 70 and your culture dictates what you believe, and anything below 40, your culture dictates what you believe. And that is why I believe the only way for the UK to turn to God is if the entire culture changes. So all I want for you to do is think for yourselves and make this choice for yourself without being influenced by your culture. And I am confident that if those barriers are removed, that if you look into the face of Jesus and you see him, I am convinced without a doubt that you would choose him. I've seen him. I've looked into his face. He is amazing. And if you can have that chance to look at him without the impediments of your culture forcing you into a certain mindset, then I am convinced that you would choose him. Most of you, at least, those that do not love evil. So this is what I believe is the greatest impediment to Christianity in the UK. Individualism.